Hello, selectors, and welcome back to the Life Burst Podcast. We're going over the new decks of the 008 variety. What is that? Conflicted Diva? We're going over some of the new centers here, and this is going to be the first of the series. If you want to see stuff from set 9, because, that GP is not too far away, you can always go to dexus.app, and you'll find me, I don't know, somewhere on here, Life Burst Podcast. Go ahead and scroll around here, you'll eventually find it. I've been updating all of them slowly but surely. You can get some peak information. You can go in here and there's a new feature where you actually just click on my name. Boom! And it takes a little while to load because I've got a lot of decks for you to look at. Several pages, in fact. And you can scroll through and check out all the old decks and the new decks. I'm deleting old decks as I go through it. As we update to the new ones, so you'll be able to pick them out from there. Anywho, that's a way to find some of that stuff, but let's talk about our first center that we're going to go over, which is going to be Iona Midrange. So, let's talk about Iona Midrange. I'm going to be covering Iona and the rest of them, and I tried to find interesting ways to make them the most unique. I'm going to go out of my way real quick and just say that the next set's centers are all good, with maybe the exception of Anne. They're all good, but they're not like mind-blowingly amazing. There's always usually a center that's kind of slightly better in the forefronts. And so we've got Iona, and Iona is pretty good, but it is a little outclassed by Deus, in my opinion. So you can basically do anything that you're doing with Iona, you could probably do a little better with Deus. But that's not to say that Iona doesn't have some niche stuff that it can do that other decks can't. And I've gone out of my way to try to bring out the highest potential I possibly can with this kind of deck. Some credit goes to Chair. I did look at and talk a little bit with him on some stuff that he was looking at. It's got my own takes on this, though. But where I started with this deck was basically looking at Iona and trying to figure out what makes her unique. Why would I run her over Deus, for example, and then kind of go from there. So if you guys don't know what Iona does, Iona level 3 has the enter ability of target one signet in your trash, put it on the field. Then it is got the action ability of once per turn, you can put the top 2 cards of your deck into the trash, and target signet on your opponent's field gets negative 2,000 power. Lastly, it's got a once per game effect where you can pay 2 enter, one of those has to be black, and then during your next turn, all of the opponent's signet must attack. At the end of that turn, you vanish all of them. Okay, so here's sort of where I started with this, is the enter ability to bring something to your trash is interesting, but it's basically card advantage, right? Deus can basically do that kind of thing too. There's a lot of, almost all black centers have the ability to bring you some kind of card advantage. This one has a little bit of an interesting ability because it brings it directly from the field, or from the trash to the field, which some black cards have a bonus if you do that. But all the black cards that I was really using with that type of effect aren't quite good enough that I'm like, yeah, this is what I gotta do. It's nice, but I can just consider it card advantage. The next thing is with its ability, its once per turn ability, the negative 2,000 is actually pretty good, but it's not straight up killing anything, right? You need negative 3,000 basically as a baseline to straight up kill certain things. The negative 2,000 will need to be added to an effect in order to kill things, and it is free if you can also add it to some other effect to kill something. So where my head was with this is that you need to do something in order to get free kills with that, or you need to basically pair up black removal. Now, black removal usually does negative 8,000, negative 3,000, and negative 10,000. Plus 2,000, adding more to negative 2,000s to each of those actually does upgrade them, right? The 3,000 goes to 5,000, meaning it's going to kill pretty much every level 1. The negative 10,000 upgraded to 12,000 is going to kill you basically every level 3, and then the negative 8,000 upgrade to 10,000 is going to kill you some extra level 3s and pretty much all level 2s that exist. So that's not a terrible way to go. But the more interesting thing is the self-mill. There's some stuff that likes seeing you mill yourself, and that will give you some kind of advantage. But by far, the most interesting thing about Iona is basically you can spend 2 enter and wipe the opponent's board next turn, right? That is very, very unique and very, very good. So we're going to try to maximize that with as best as we can. And that sort of came out in the Elric deck, right? So when you basically invite the opponent to hit you 3 times on your turn, right? You're basically saying, yeah, go for it. Hit me. I'm going to get over it. And then I'm going to hit you back twice as hard, right? That's basically an invitation for red decks or white decks to wipe your field and then just go and attack with everything. It's nice that it's sort of like can shut down Tama, but Tama has an ability to restand all its Signy anyways. So you have to try to figure out how can I minimize the damage here? And kind of one of the things too is there are ways to minimize the damage by just basically taking no damage, or by X, for example, was something I was thinking at, which vanishes Signy that are attacking after the first one. But they're going to get vanished anyways, so I thought that was kind of a waste of an ability. And more importantly, I want to actually repay myself for that 2-enter. So I came down to this basic premise. I want to have either something that I can put something on the field. So basically, if they open up a hole, right, I can then put something on the field, and they'll have to attack, and they'll have to vanish it. And since I have control of what goes onto it, right, I can put down something small and useless, but it also controls what's going in my enter. Because if I can basically say, hey, opponent, you're going to attack, and you're going to vanish all my Signy, then this ability gained me an enter, right? 1 enter, 2 enter, I lost. I gain an enter, I gain a second enter, and then the third enter I gain for my Signy. So I'm going to get enter, right? And that is kind of nice because this costs Nova's Chopper costs 0 enter, right? And lets you look at the entire top 5 of your deck, which is really deep, by the way, and then put a Signy into the field, right? Any Signy you want. Now, the enter abilities don't matter, but there's actually kind of a lot of ways to get around that now. I still love enter abilities on the opponent's turn, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of auto abilities that are really useful for this type of things, especially in white and black. So I really like that. I also wanted white and black specifically because of the bringing something back from my trash. Basically, anytime I see bring something back from your trash, I think of what's the most annoying thing I can bring back, and it's usually Exia. Exia is also another good one here. So that way you can shut down lanes on the opponent's turn still. You can also run Nova Mute. You can do both of them at the same time, which is pretty fun. This actually does fuel the Iona's ability too, discarding a card. And it's one of the only ways to do a level 1 attack phase stop something, which is pretty nice. But if you needed to hit the emergency, oh god, they opened up all my lanes and I've got nothing else to do. Usually if they've opened up all your lanes, they've given you 3 enter, which means that Mel Invisible can come in here and really, really, really protect your damage. The cool thing with Mel Invisible also is that because you are stopping damage instead of just straight up targeting a Signy and downing it, you can actually still use this against things like Tama. Mel Invisible is one of these cards that's really being slept on in the meta right now. It requires you to use green, but there's more good green than you'd expect. You can use Mel Invisible and Energy Door in your deck, and you're justifying green. You still need some good green cards, but this set does introduce a few good green cards to the point where splashing green is actually not a bad idea. Splashing green is a very feasible route. Going on that fact, Energy Door, right, gives you a lot of different opinions here too, but one of them is that it basically protects you from being attacked by an L-Rig at least once, right? And that just kind of goes with this Attrition plan. So I'm really starting to value Attrition once I decided I wanted to go with Nova and I wanted to go with Mel. I've started to think I really like Attrition because that will just help me get the game going longer. And I can tell you with all the bang decks that I've tested, Super Celestia Saber plus Energy Door, if you're playing any form of green, white, black, and you're basically playing mid-range, this is the 2 wambo pajamos you're looking for. You're going to get some enter too. Again, this is cheap. Nova Chopper is really cheap to use, and you're going to get enter. You're going to get enter when you use Iona's once per game as well. So it's not a bad idea to go with this. I also wanted a little bit more enter, and you'll see, since I'm playing green, and the best green cards get you enter, if you're splashing, that is, this is not a crazy route to go down. So this is sort of the L-Rig deck. This is the backbone of the deck of what I'm considering doing. Another idea, by the way, here is Mel Revise. The thing that's really great about it, aside from it being able to enter charge you too, so Iona lets you put 2 cards into your trash, and then you can immediately put those into your enter if you really needed to. But this Mel Revise allows you to really be choosy with what colors you're putting back in. Same thing with Energy Door. So between the two of them, you really get the cool opportunity of being able to be a little greedy with your enter and not get punished for it. So let's talk about that main deck now, right? This is what we're working with. So I was looking at, now that I've gotten my ideas of how I'm solidifying everything I need to maximize the negative 2,000 effect. I also need to maximize a target Signy coming from my trash to the field. And I also want to be aware of the fact that I might need to cover, the worst thing I could do here is I can cover 3 open lanes really easily with Mel Invisible, and I can cover 1 open lane really easily with Nova Chopper. The annoying one is 2, right? So how do I maximize sort of that around here? And my first couple thoughts when I started thinking about this stuff was, how do I upgrade the things that are good, right? And so where I ended up being is, the first thought was actually SimForce. So this is a shout out to someone in my locals, you know who you are, who loves SimForce probably way too much. But the cool thing about SimForce is it goes into other lanes, right? Like it can jump from one lane to another lane, which is really good. I've also really come around to the life burst of target Signy. Oh, yeah, it's just a different one. Target Signy on the opponent's field can't attack, right? It's not as great against Tama, but it's an okay one. I forgot. There's another Signy that has a better life burst that I wanted to shout out, not this one. But the fact that this can jump into open lanes for you, especially because you can get it off of Nova Chopper, put it into play. Your opponent will be looking at attacking, probably with like Dash Piranha or something like that, and looking to attack with a 3,000, a 3,000, and like a 2,000. And you've got SimForce on the field, and you're like, yep, go for it, right? Even if they have a Hera or something, you're like, go for it. Block it, block it, block it, right? That is when it's at its best. You don't necessarily need this, but it's a really nice safety valve to put out, especially if you're going for the once per game. You just put out there and say, yeah, you have to deal with this now, and it's going to be another thing you have to overcome. 8,000 is a little bit of an annoying thing. So there's that going on there. Quinn is another interesting one, because Quinn gives something negative 2,000 and moves things around, which is pretty interesting on both attack steps. So I really like Quinn in this deck, only as a 2-of, because again, green is not my major function, but there's enough card draw, enough filter in this deck that you'll find Quinn. The fact that it triggers on every attack phase is really important. So not only can you give something negative 2,000 for free, and then give with your center, and then give it another negative 2,000, negative 4,000, which will kill 3,000s, which is basically opens a lane for you, because there's almost guaranteed going to be a 3,000 on your opponent's side. This allows you to very easily get free open lanes. But more importantly is it messes up combat math, right? So let's say you end up on the opponent's attack phase, right? You can start swapping Signys around. What this allows you to do is set them up for a bad turn when you go for your once per game. They all have to attack. So this allows you to basically set them up so that way when they attack, they vanish the Signys that are in front of them, and you get enter, which is something that you're trying to do, or the complete opposite. You can set them up so that they attack into the wrong thing, and your annoying cards last an extra turn. This is actually a pretty cool way to do it. Going more into that backbone, we want other things that are pretty annoying to pop out when the attack phase is happening, right? And here's some these bottom ones are all really kind of annoying, right? So Bernices is really nice because, one, it's large, right? It's going to be 7,000 power. But also, if it's vanished, it can mill your opponent. The opponent is going to be kind of scared of that, just because these games are going a little longer. So this is just a little additive mill. If anyone's learned anything, it's that milling 2 extra is usually enough for Phalaris to eventually kill someone, or at least deal damage to them. Exia is really great, again, if the opponent's got souls on the other side, or if they have on-attack step, or not on-attack step, but on-attack triggers, which some decks do. Exia will block those lanes then, and stop them from coming through, which is pretty nice. Then Coella is a really cool card here, because Coella, aside from being some amount of deck smoothing, which again, any mid-range deck is looking for, a lot of people forget that it doesn't say at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, vanilla a Signy on the other side. It says when an opponent attacks, which means that you can Nova Chopper this out, put it on the field, and just screw over Assassin. You can screw over Double Crush. You can screw over Lancer. It's all things that you can do with it, and it's perfectly good. You lose the Enter ability, but if you're saving yourself a life cloth damage, it's perfectly reasonable. So all of those are pretty annoying Signies to put out into play, and then just kind of screw the opponent a little bit, right? With Nova Chopper. Another interesting one here is only a one of, and that's because I was kind of talked out of it by, again, Chair, where Yuki does a lot of the same things, where Yuki just in vanillas a lot of things, but Coruscant's got something a little interesting to it that isn't normal, which is that Coruscant blanks out all of your opponent's Signies, which is pretty nice. So Coruscant will blank it out. All you have to do is activate your ability. Or, for example, Baphomet. Baphomet's in here as well, and then you can vanilla out your opponent's abilities. Another interesting thing, very, very minor case, if they kill Bernices and you have one of these on the field, you can mill yourself, and then it will trigger this and vanilla out all of the opponent's Signies after that. Just being able to blank out completely Signies are kind of really nice. Now, you can't do this with Iona's effect because it does target when you mill, so you can't do this to stop Exia, but you do have Baphomets in your deck, so theoretically you can. Now, there is a lot of self-mill in here. That's also something that's Caesar's going to take advantage of. That means Caesar's going to very easily start dealing damage with it. Like I said, I've got some Enter Charge things here since we're in green. Bang Memoria and Sheeran also being able to do that. With your Super Celestia Saber, you're bringing back something black, and usually you're bringing white one of these two back. So when you're with your black choice, you usually end up picking Caesar, or you actually end up picking green gas. That's one of the reasons why it's like two of in this deck. It's just there mostly to get yourself green enter to Energy Door if you need to off of Super Celestia Saber. Another thing is with Dark Energy, you do get to Enter Charge one more time, which is kind of nice. But the negative 5,000, I decided this is better than some of the other options that you could have had at free. Because the 5,000 plus the 2,000 will hit 7,000. That'll clear most level 1 lanes for you. So that is the deck in a nutshell. There's not really too much more to dive into it. I actually do like this deck pretty well as as just an option here if you wanted to go into something that's a little more attrition based, has pretty much a kind of an even matchup against anything. He's actually pretty good against discard matchups, these blue-white decks that are appearing, just because it's so redundant and has so much trash recursion, so much long game that it can stretch it out. It's a little weaker to aggro decks, but it does end up having a bit more of a clock than those other mid-range decks, because those aggro decks are probably trying to attack you anyways with all lanes. That actually removes the downside of the once per game action ability and does let you hit back really hard on that stuff, so you can put yourself a clock and pace yourself with the aggro decks. So I actually genuinely do think this deck is pretty good. I rated it as B tier after I built it and played a few games with it. Again, I do think there are other decks that probably can do all the same stuff, maybe a little bit better, but I know there's a lot of people who are just specifically Iona stans. So if you wanted to build some kind of Iona, I strongly recommend this. I actually think it does a lot more unique things than what most decks do and offers some cool niches. And this is just an interesting way to build it. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me what you guys would change. Maybe you had a different idea for it. Shout it out in the comments so we can all see. And next time, guys, I hope you always flip a life first.